Too many women are imprisoned every year for nonviolent offenses. Women are being imprisoned due to mental health problems, drug and alcohol misuse, financial difficulties, and experience of domestic violence and sexual abuse.
I'm a human being, man. I'm a person, with feelings and emotions. Does anybody ever ask me how my day is going? No. We practically live with these girls. We know everything about them. Do they ever for a second think about our life outside of work? It's like we cease to exist outside of those fucking walls. What the fuck is that? I'm sitting here, right? I exist. They think I'm so tall. My feelings don't get hurt.
This is a clip from the television show Orange is the New Black. However, this is based off a true story of Piper Kerman's experience while in prison. In the clip, the male officer is very condescending to the women. He sexually abuses them and emotionally abuses the inmates. In all reality, this does happen in prisons, and most likely not in all of them, but in a widespread variety of them. And this type of sexual abuse cannot be happening. Many women who offend have spent time in the local authority as children, and have children who depend on them for everything. As a community, if we can start helping children in foster care or in orphanages to have a better future, it will reduce the amount of women who end up in prison later on in life. According to the Prison Reform Trust, about 54% of the women leaving prison are reconvicted within 1 year, and about 66% of them have dependent children under the age of 18. Too many women are imprisoned every year for nonviolent offenses. Women are being imprisoned due to mental health problems, drug and alcohol misuse, financial difficulties, and experience of domestic violence and sexual abuse. Dennis Conrad at the Scott County Sheriff's Office said, "Men and women are housed in the same building but in different housing units with sight and sound separation. Their last incident of a sexual assault was in the old jail in the early 80s. At the Scott County Jail, they have 60 male officers and 25 female officers. Female officers only do the searches of female arrestees being booked into the jail." Rebecca Bowker, the executive officer of the Iowa State Penitentiary, had little to say on this topic. She said that only 25% of the Iowa State Penitentiary staff is female, and that men and women are not housed together. The first person I interviewed was Drew Vorath. Do you know anything about women in prison?
No, I do not.
Do you think that it's right to give women an alternative consequence other than going straight to prison?
I feel that women should have the same rights as men, and they deserve the same consequences that men receive.
Since most women go to prison for nonviolent offenses, should there be more services or support groups to help from relapsing once they are out of prison?
There should be more services and support groups based upon the crime that they committed that put them in jail.
Okay, and do you think that it is right for men to work in a women's prison or correctional center?
There shouldn't be any issues with men working in women prisons because there's not much of a difference, and there shouldn't be any suspicions about what men would do to women.
And next I'll be interviewing Chris Bohr. Do you know anything about women in prison?
Well, Jordan, my freshman year here at St. Ambrose University, I studied criminal justice for a full year. I was going to major in something in that category, but I decided not to. But anyways, what I've heard about women in prison is that usually there's a lot of drug-related or nonviolent acts to put them there. So I don't really have too much of a background, but I have about a year of background under my belt.
Okay. Do you think it is right to give women an alternative consequence other than going straight to jail?
I do believe that there should not be an alternative consequence, mainly because the fact that nowadays it's always about women being equal to men and stuff like that. So along those lines, I feel like it would raise a lot of rioting or something, just an outbreak, just by giving women this special privilege when it seems that equal rights is a huge thing going around in America right now.
Okay. Since most women go to prison for nonviolent offenses, should there be more services or support groups to help them from relapsing once they're out?
That's a really good idea, actually. I think that both men and women should have this privilege when they come out of jail, whether it would be nonviolent or even violent offenses, just because it seems that usually when people go to prison, especially at a young age, they're always drawn right back to it because it's what they know. So we always use the expression in criminal justice class, 3 hots and a cot is guaranteed in prison. So you always have somewhere to stay and always have somewhere to eat. So for these people who don't really know what it's like outside of prison, if they go in at a young age, then they're really crippled for the outside environment. So I think that this would actually be a really good idea if we would be able to pull it off.
I agree. And do you think it's right for men to work in a women's prison?
I'd say yes and no to this question. The yes part, because there is a professional line, obviously, that in a prison you're going to want professional adults or professional men to be patrolling the women and making sure that there's order in the prison, obviously. Also, I also think that men are just naturally just like bigger or stronger naturally. Not trying to start any sexist comments there, but so also if there's 2 females, maybe a female officer that would be guarding the prison, then there would be a chance for more of outbreak or whatever. But then again, there also is the chance that there is a man, like a male officer, who would take advantage of their the inmates, the women inmates. So obviously, there's always that chance. So you have to keep a close eye on it with it. But I do think that there is professional enough people out there who care about their morals and their jobs that would keep order in the prison.
Okay, thank you. Russ Emergian states in his book that many sexual relationships appear to be unreported due to the fear of retaliation and vulnerability felt by women. Most women do not report sexual violence or assault in prisons because it is difficult to prove the abuse. The thoughts of the inmate are, who are they going to believe? The guards are more superior over me as an inmate. Although more women should be reporting the abuse that happened. From the inmate perspective, the inmate thinks that sexual relationships are viewed as normal and are accepted in the prison. This does not mean that it is allowed by the guards, just that women in prison think of it as to be normal because they are wanted by someone else that is inside the prison instead of their family that might have already left them outside of the prison. Legislation concerning sexual misconduct has failed in at least 45 states, and no reforms in this area have been instituted in 13 states. PREA, aka the Prison Rape Elimination Act, was passed September 4, 2003. This act aims to improve prevention and detection of prison sexual assault. The Prison Rape Elimination Act was passed to establish a zero-tolerance policy towards prison rape and to minimize sexual victimization in correctional facilities. This act was the first United States federal law passed dealing with the sexual assault of prisoners. There are many online organizations to help women in prison. The organization that I found is based out of Chicago called womeninprison.org. This organization posts stories of women who have been out of prison that have a story to tell. They have resources for women post-prison, and you can donate to the organization. Some things we can do are create more services in the community, especially services for when they get out of prison, but also services for when they're in prison and need someone to talk to. Also, if we catch it early on, so they have better futures, that would be a great start. A start would be in orphanages or in foster care, because most of those children are the ones that end up in the criminal justice system. A macro-level solution would be finding another consequence to women with children. That way their child doesn't end up in the foster care system. Since most women in prison are there for nonviolent crimes, giving them an alternative punishment would lower the number of women in prison, essentially lowering the chances of women being sexually abused in prison. Some micro solutions are more security and cameras in the prisons and correctional centers, more security in the way that only women view the cameras and surveillance cameras, and that only women work in women prisons and male work in male prisons, or even that a woman guard has to be present when a male guard is in the building of a woman prison, just in case something happens.